It's almost 10 years to the day since Exeter Chiefs had that special night at the Memorial Stadium. And for all of us, it was the start of something special. But I'm going to take you back down memory lane and let's talk about a couple of seasons leading into that year, where the Chiefs were the bridesmaids for many times, but you'd obviously been at the heart of it. What were your thoughts at that time? And could you obviously had a vision of where you wanted to take the club?
Yeah. You know, if I basically, when we moved to Sandy Park, 2006, you know, we went from semi-professional to full-time professional. All right. Ian Bremner had actually been the architect with me of the original changing rooms and the facilities for players at Sandy Park. And he never got to see it because in the March of 2006, we parted company and we moved to Sandy Park in the June, July, and under the direction of Pete Druitt. And, you know, my brief to Pete had been, right, okay, you've got the facilities. We can afford to give you more money. You can go full time. And so we went full time player 2006. So we set the stall out because you're quite right. Under for the previous number of years, we got there almost. We just need to push it over the top. And with having Sandy Park, which was built to the minimum standards, because you've got to remember that it was very much then about, unless you're minimum standards, you were not going to get in the Premiership. You're not going to get in the Premiership. And so we had Sandy Park there. So the stall was actually set out. And in 6, 7, and 8, we didn't quite do it. We were just falling short, like you say. We were chief bridesmaid. We didn't actually get to be the bride, and which resulted in the demise of, metaphorically speaking, of Mr. Druitt, Peter, and the appointment of Rob, and I put together. I can remember the it was a bit of a difficult board meeting when I announced to the board who I had I had sort of lined up to take over in coaching and what have you. Anyway, we put it all in place and agreed that Rob could actually appoint his own assistant coach, and he went for Ali Heifer, who he played against, and obviously he had great faith in Ali's ability, and so entering the 2009-10 season, we had a new coaching setup. Ali Heifer, I never knew from Adam, but in behind Rob, we had Rob Gibson, Robin Cowling, Ricky Pello, all guys that were there working for the club in the academy, and I brought them all together in a training team, and on we went. And at the beginning of the season, did I expect anything? I think the answer is no. But as the season progressed, and we had to play these. We knew the final was going to be an evening, a two-legged final, one at home, one away. We knew what time it was going to be, and around Christmas time, Rob changed the training program and started having the lads in training, and I questioned it, and he said, well, and so it was conditioning the guys to play evening games.
It was interesting because he said to me when I spoke to him about it that it was a plan that they hatched in-house, but you were playing at that time two of your biggest rivals at the time in Plymouth Albion, Bristol and London Welsh, and for you to lose two of those games to your biggest rivals didn't sit pretty with the fan base.
No, it didn't. And we got into this the different training regime and what have you, and then I forget the exact, but we lost a couple of games, and some of the supporters and fans are a bit fickle now and again, and they were sort of, oh, what the hell has the club done? Should we? There's no chance we can do this because of this. Anyway, I held faith, as we all do, and well, anyway, we got ourselves there, and we're in the final against Bristol.
I'm just going to take you just back to the whole playoff concept, because it was new, wasn't it? Every year before that, Tony, you would play a regular league season, and the top side would go up, but the playoffs was different. And
no, it was, and you know why? And it's interesting. Thanks for reminding me that, because I was the representative for the club on First Division Rugby, and I forget the guy's name, but the chief exec of Bristol, can't think of his name, an ex-second row player. But anyway, prior to the 2009-2010 season, you're right. We used to. It was just a straightforward. You got to the top, and that was it. But it was the second tier rugby, First Division, was run by the clubs. The RFU. 2009-10 was the first year that the RFU were going to run it. They take them. Barron was the chief exec. I seem to remember the RFU, and they just come off the back of having a big argument with the Premiership clubs over the release of England players. And Barron's recipe to go forward was, let's form our own second tier professional league, and I can draw players from there. Which, if we have this second tier league that's actually controlled by the RFU, and we call it the championship, then we can. Those players are under our control. We can pull them off if the Premiership won't give us any players. So the championship was born at the same time as Rob took over. You're dead right. Now, in the pre-planning for that championship, at the First Division board meetings, it was said that the final would be, we go all the way through, and the final would be played against the top two clubs at Twickenham. And as always, money always sort of comes up my head. And I said at the meeting, well, hang on a minute, who's going to pay for us to stay up at Twickenham overnight and all the expenses and all the rest of it? And it was like, well, we get, and I said, well, there's no money in it for us. What's the prize money? No prize money. And so you're going to get all the revenue. And anyway, we argued, supported by Bristol, and I can't think of the guy's name, the chief exec. Him and I argued so much so that we got the RFU to agree to not have the final at Twickenham on the same day as have the Premiership final, but to let us have a two-legged final, home and away. That meant that the club that finished first and second actually had a big payday, okay, with one leg of the home final. So that's how that came about, all right. And it was all about money, bringing some money into the championship. So that's how that strange day got there. But even in that, when we were playing, we got to the top four, didn't we? I think did we not lose one of those games?
Yeah, we lost a few in the playoffs. It was a weird one, because the clubs, as Rob kind of alluded to me, the clubs at that time, if you were in the top 8, you knew you were going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So there were teams backing off towards the end of the year. And by the time we came into the playoffs, it was a kind of, we were winning, but we weren't at that intensity. And those first few rounds, the Chiefs got kind of caught a bit short and cold in some respects. But then obviously it moved on. We qualify for that playoffs. But behind the scenes at Sandy Park, Tony, you were having to get, as you say, plans in place for potential Premiership life. And that meant the North Terrace was built, the work going in and around. I remember the medical door, for example, is another classic, isn't it, that people don't realise?
Well, what actually happened, apart from this, so I've got a new coaching team, all right, okay, and we're sort of doing okay, but I have great faith in Rob and the coaching team. We arrive in December, excuse me, and I actually made the phone call to Mark McCaffrey, who was chief executive of Premier Rugby, and I said, I've got a feeling that we may be in the frame next year to come up to the Premiership, and I'm just checking with you the numbers. Now, it says in the regulations that we've got to have a 10,000 capacity by the 31st of March. We can't really afford to invest the money if we don't come to the Premiership. So if we've got the plans and we've got everything approved, and if we get to the Premiership, and we'll know that we finish the thing off in early May, I know I've got time to build that grandstand on the north end, and we'll meet. And he said, no. Unless you've got a 10,000 capacity that is audited by the 31st of March, you can't come in. And I said, well, they're going to argue all the thing. And I was told, no. So I then said, well, okay, all right. Money. And he said, well, I can't tell you what that is. And I said, well, how much money do we get? He can't tell you that. So what actually happened, I went back and told the board, and they said, well done. And so the board actually asked myself, Kieran and Alan went to Premier Rugby building, their head office in early January, had the same meeting, all right, and discussed it with Phil Winstanley, and they said, no, we can't tell you how much money you're going to get or not get, and B, if you don't build all the facilities. So we came back in early January and instructed our building, the guys doing our building works, to get on and get the foundations in. I phoned that arena seat and said, how long are you going to take you to finalise the drawings and produce a grant? And they said, oh, probably about 3 months. And I said, no, you've got to build it all in 8 weeks. So in 8 weeks, they actually finished off the design work, got the steel built, got it all done, and everything came and built it. And 31st of March, we had it. And the daughters, you're dead right. And when we checked when we had a we have a minimum standards inspection. You have at the end of the season, you have one of those where they do a pre-check, and they found that the door to the first aid room was not wide enough.
Yeah.
So we had to have the door widened, and I think we had to have the wall taken down, and it just made slightly bigger. But we had a lot of work to do in the 3 months leading up to the end of the season. But it's just a good job we done it, because everything.
I go back to that time, because that was when I was at the morning news covering the club. But that first leg with the crowd that you had in there, that was the biggest ever crowd Sandy Park had ever seen at that time. But the buzz around the place then, that must have given you an insight into the passion that Premiership Rugby could bring to the club and the region.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Bristol were our old enemies. We on and off been playing Bristol for the previous sort of 5
or 6 years, wasn't it?
Well, I'm trying to work it out now as I'm talking. For the 8, no longer than that. For the 12 years we've been in the champion, in the first division, and it was just that thing about, they were a Premiership team that were down in the Championship that season. And they came to Bristol with this air of, we're going to do this. You're just a second tier rugby team, blah, blah. And as you quite rightly said, the ground was at capacity. It was bursting at the seams, and I think I was extremely nervous. I think everybody was a bit nervous, but excited about the fact that this could sort of change the whole rugby in Exeter and the West Country. We had to do it, and we only just done it. Was it
The game itself, yeah,
it
it finished 9-6 that night. So
9-6?
it was edgy going into that second leg, but obviously there was a lead. But again, going up there, the media, a lot of people were just thinking Bristol only had to turn up for that second leg. They were at home. They were the team coming down from Premiership.
I remember that. It was we go to Bristol, so we get this done. It was a Wednesday night, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Wednesday night, Sandy Park. We got it done, and then all the media, all the press were going, "Well, their home advantage. If it's only worth 3 points, they're going to get absolutely slaughtered up in Bristol." And blah 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 blah. So we went to Bristol, and God, I was bloody nervous. I was bloody, but so much so that what actually happened is that we got there, and the game got underway, and it was like, can we do this? Can't we do it? Can we do it? Can't we do it? And then I got to halfway through the second half. I think we were somewhere around about 60 minutes, and I couldn't stand the tension anymore. I went outside the ground. I had to go outside the ground.
I was going to talk to you about that. Yeah, I remember talking to you after. You could watch. You haven't seen the final 10 minutes or something.
No. I went outside. I was walking up and down in the car park, and then I heard this big roar, and I went round the back to the TV wagons, and I said, "What's fun?" And they said, "What do you mean?" I said, "What?" And then they wouldn't let me back in. Who it was? They couldn't get back in the ground, and so one of the sort of TV guys took me back in, so I got back in the ground. And if you remember, it was absolutely beating with rain.
Yeah, I was going to say, you must have been soaking wet if you were walking around outside.
I was, and we all the directors were there. We all had our rugby suits on, and back then they were made of really heavy material, and of course they were all wet, and we were like, we probably all weighed an extra 3 stone because of the clothes we were wearing. But we went, I went in the changing rooms at the end of the game. I got in, and when the guys eventually got off the pitch, went in the changing rooms, and nobody knew what to do about the trophies. If you remember, there was a massive delay.
There was a pitch invasion led by Tash Pavis. There was a pitch invasion, and that's right. They couldn't do the presentation on the pitch.
Well, I don't think. You see, rumor has it. Now, I've never had this corroborated by anybody. Rumor has it that Sky TV, because it was Sky in them days, that Sky TV had done a walkthrough with the Bristol people on the presentation, how the presentation was going to go, and of course they just presumed they were going to go and pick the trophy up, and consequently, because they lost, they just went to their change room, closed the door, and that was it. They wouldn't speak and do anything to anybody, so nobody knew what to do. Nobody knew what to do. It was absolutely peeing with rain, and we come in, and it ended up, and because you've got that picture, it ended up by I think he was a vice president of the RFU, coming in the changing room and just basically, there we are, there's your trophy, and it was pretty poor to be right. I mean, because raining or no raining, there was no proper presentation. And I think it was because that they'd everything had been planned around Bristol receiving it. And of course, they weren't there to receive it, so they didn't do anything to organise it.
Yeah, the celebrations after though were
absolutely magic. I mean, you've got to have been in that changing room to actually experience what I just said. But then we came outside with the trophy on the pitch. It was still raining. All our fans were on the pitch. We've got absolutely drowned, and then the players eventually went back in the change room to get changed, and all the directors and their family, we'd hired a separate coach to go up there. So I then, while we were still in the ground after the presentation, I'd taken a phone call from the manager at Sandy Park, and he said to me, "Tony, all the fans are still in Sandy Park. What do you want me to do?" And I said, "Well, you can't kick them out. I bet they'd celebrate." Yeah, he said. And I said, "Well, we're all coming back." I said, "You're going to have coach loads of winter." I said, "Just keep the bar open." And so they kept the bar open. So we all got on our coach, and because every single one of us was drowned, there was so much steam coming off of all of us in the coach that the windscreen was steaming up. So I actually sat on the dashboard of the coach all the way down the M5, wiping the windscreen so the driver could see where he's going, because the steam missed it. Couldn't keep up with the steam we were generating. But what a fantastic night! I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, well, we got back to Sandy Park, and it wasn't a dream come true. I'd said to people at the time, it was our ambition to get into the Premiership. We'd achieved our ambition, you know, and it was just brilliant. And in a way, beating Bristol was really good, because they were our you know, in the first division, they were the local derby.
Yeah, them and Plymouth, wouldn't it?
Yeah, them and Plymouth, and just to beat them to get in there, and even Chris Boyd, their chairman, I hope he forgives me, because he is a friend for what I'm going to say now. But for the first, he's only just stopped saying it. But for the first 7 or 8 years, every time he saw me, he'd say, "Well, you should never have got in the bloody Premiership anyway." He said, because that 2-leg bloody final should never have been. We won the league quite rightly, and you finished second. And I keep reminding him that it was only him, his guy, whose name still escapes me, and myself that actually pushed through that 2-legged final. So he was a maker of his own destiny to some degree, you know. But fantastic night.
Final one from me, Tony. You and I are lucky enough to be around Sandy Park every day, pretty much 365. But that group of players in particular, they created a culture which still exists very much now. You've still got 2 or 3 of the lads still in that team, but that culture they created, and I saw it the other night on a Zoom call with probably 14 of them. They are best buddies. They would live and die for each other, wouldn't they?
They would, you know. Now the Rob may have had a difficult year in 2009-10, but he had extremely difficult years in 10, 11, 11, 12. You and me, because those early days, we leaned very heavily, and he told me on more than one occasion that the guys were playing way above their ability. But to survive in the Premiership, they had that little bit of a special edge, that bond. And I know, because you know, I still meet some of them, that bond of that group of guys in the 2009 and 10 season will live with them throughout the whole of their lives, really, because that was a special little group of guys. And you're quite right, we still got Mooney and
Dollar
and Dollar just remaining from those lads back then.
And those, you just mentioned those 3, they're the 3 guys and others before that have passed that baton on to the, like, so what I call our new generation, the Knowlesies, the Slades, the Count Dickies.
Yeah.
They know that culture of the club through those guys, don't they?
They do, because they, you know, the 3 lads you've just mentioned there, you know, are stars, but they're our homegrown stars. They would have been you know, that group in 9 and 10, they would have been there working at the age very quickly. They would have been the guys when Jack and Luke were 15, 16. They were looking up to these guys that had just missed Henry out a lot, but we're looking up to that the group of guys that had just got us into the Premiership. So when they joined the squad as young men, 18, 19 years of age, there was still quite a lot of the original guys from 9-10 season still within the squad. And so, yes, that culture has been passed down. And that's the bit, every now and again, you'll get, these days, you'll get a director of rugby or somebody from an opposing team talk about emulating what we do at Exeter, where we emulate the you know, our business and our culture. You can't do it. What we've got is ours. It's grown. It's there. You understand? You can't create what we got. You've either got it or you haven't got it, and we've got it. And we, you know, I know Rob is very, very much about making sure we keep it. And I like it when people say to me, Exeter's like an old-fashioned rugby club. Yes, because we've got a culture, we've got a belief, we've got a trust in everybody, and you know, and we carry that in the Premiership, and that's our little edge over a lot of other clubs. It's that bit we've got, that culture, those years of fighting to get where we want to get to.